Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of For Mature Audiences. I'm Sherrie Dunlevy.
And I'm Tate Blanchard, and we're so glad that you joined us today, and we hope that you will join us every month as we talk about important issues and topics that are pertinent to the aging citizens in and around the Ohio Valley.
Our goal is to share information that you'll find interesting, informative, and maybe even entertaining. In addition, each episode is going to feature a segment we call Aging Awesomely, and that will feature seniors who are living their best lives as they age.
And if we look familiar, it could be because you may remember Sherrie here from her days as a news anchor at WTOV9.
And you may remember Tate when he anchored news for WTRF Channel 7. Well, now we work together at IC Care, where we provide in-home companion care services to area seniors so they can remain living independently in their homes. And that's where we're going to start this show today, talking about aging in place, Tate, right?
That's right.
Okay, so why don't you explain to us what exactly in-home care is?
Yeah, in-home care is different than what someone might perceive as home health. There is a defined difference because home health would be your nursing, your physical therapist, or your occupational therapist coming to the home. But what we do at IC Care in terms of home care is employing nurses' aides that go into the homes of area senior citizens to help them to maintain their independence at home by helping them with the everyday things that start to become a challenge for them, the things that we in the medical world call activities of daily living. So if a person starts to struggle with personal care for themselves and taking care of their personal hygiene, doing laundry. Oftentimes, laundry is in the basement of homes.
Yeah.
And that becomes a challenge for folks, and it's not safe to go down the basement steps. So we can do homemaking services, making sure that folks are eating well, because sometimes when folks start to age and they become ill, or maybe they start to develop signs of dementia, they forget to eat. And so we want to make sure that folks are eating well and taking care of themselves. Also, being a companion for a lot of folks. If they're not able to get out and about, having someone come in and visit with them and to hear their stories from throughout their lives and all of those types of things is critically important, and that is exactly what we do at IC Care.
Yeah, I think we all found out what loneliness was like during the pandemic, so, companionship is a key component. But let me ask you, is there a difference between in-home care and in-home health care? Are those interchangeable?
They're not. There is definitely a difference, and the difference would be in-home care would be an aide or a caregiver, depending on what agency that you would go through. With IC Care, it would be an aide, and home health is affiliated with a health organization that is sending in nursing, occupational therapists, and nurses' aides that come into the home. And those individuals are usually in the home with a patient for about 30 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week. Whereas with home care, what we do at IC Care is that individual is there with you for a minimum of 4 hours anytime that we come out and pay a visit to one of our patients or clients.
Okay, so let's just talk about, what are some of the questions people should be asking when they're inquiring about maybe looking into in-home care?
That's a really good question, Sherrie, because there's a lot of things that folks need to be asking, and you know this and I know this. When folks are calling in to inquire about our services, oftentimes they don't know what they don't know because this is the first time that they've ever encountered this type of situation. So first of all, finding out what type of credentials the organization or the agency may have. What type of individuals do they employ? Do they have a medical professional on staff, which is, in my opinion, huge, which of course at IC Care we do. We are owned and operated by a master's educated registered nurse. And that is incredibly beneficial to the patient and their families and gives them all peace of mind knowing that we have a medical component that is going to oversee everything that happens with that patient. And going back to the staff and trying to learn what type of individuals do they employ. Do they have any type of experience requirements prior to that individual joining their team? What is their service area? What types of services can they offer in the home? Some agencies can offer a little bit more than other agencies can, especially if they have a medical professional like we do. We can do a little bit more than any other home care provider might be able to do with that nursing oversight. And then, of course, trying to find out what the pricing options or what the payer sources are that are available for that particular agency and how you can possibly work that into your budget.
Right. Those are all great things to look at. So one of the things that I noticed is that, there are a lot of people that come in and call in, whether they are family members or their grandchildren, and they're afraid to mention this to their loved one, or they have a loved one who seems resistant. So what would you say would be the best way to maybe get this conversation started with these people?
I think that communication, you and I have a background in communication, so I always believe that communication is key to everything. But trying to force someone into something that they do not want to do, or trying to force your opinion on the situation on someone who might be in need of care services, is probably not the right way to go about the conversation. So having a very open and honest conversation, but being receptive to what the potential care recipient feels about the situation and how they want to approach the situation is critically important, because if you are trying to force a loved one into doing something, and inviting what would be a total stranger into their home is something that is really apprehensive for a lot of people. No one really wants to have a stranger come in and out of their home, or having multiple strangers coming in and out of their home. So I think that it is important for us all to be realistic as we age, that there are certain conversations that we must broach with our loved ones, but doing it with love and being receptive to understanding someone else's point of view and trying to understand what it is that their concerns may be going into it, and validating those concerns, but also giving them reassurance that if you do your due diligence and you go through and you ask the right questions and finding out perhaps, does your agency, do they do background checks? Do you do drug screens? How often do you do those types of things? Trying to make sure that the agency has the right barriers or the right protections in place is really important. And making sure that, again, going back to the reassurance and making sure that you're reassuring your loved one that things will be okay, perhaps we give this a try. Something else I think that's important too is finding out that if you're speaking to an agency, what type of contractual obligations do you owe that agency? Should you employ them to provide home care services? Because maybe this is something that you want to test with your loved one, and if it's something that they're totally uncomfortable with after you've employed an agency, maybe there are easy ways to get out of that contract, like there are with us, and not being locked into something long term. And then, of course, that really is a deterrent for a lot of folks.
Right, because I mean, it is very stressful to have someone that you don't know come into your house. And so it's nice to know that, if you ask these questions, get the answers that you need so that you feel secure in having someone come in to take care of your loved one, and as that loved one, that they feel secure that they're being taken care of instead of taking advantage of.
That's exactly right. And we try to do that because our main goal is making sure that we are preserving the independence, safety, and dignity of the care recipients that we are taking care of at IC Care. And we always try to get the same caregiver or same caregivers in place for a person. That way, it's not some revolving door in their home. They get to build a rapport and a relationship with the caregiver or caregivers, depending on the number of hours that they may need from IC Care, that are coming into the home, so they can have that comfort and trust and have a friend that is coming to visit with them every single time that we're there.
So thank you for that information. Okay, so when we come back, where do you start with all of this? We're going to talk with a woman who I think is a great place to start first. It's Ann Kegler, and she's from Altenheim Resource Services, and we'll be talking to her next.
From humble beginnings in 1837, West Liberty University has been home to thousands of students. Whether you're a recent high school graduate or looking to complete a college degree later in life, starting your educational career at West Liberty University will be the catalyst for your future. This is a place where you will discover who you are and where you belong, surrounded by lifelong friends and a supportive faculty and staff. Start your journey home at westliberty.edu.
Welcome back to Mature Audiences. You know, Sherrie, two of the biggest questions that people are always asking when they feel that they might need care for their aging parent or their loved one, or realize that they might need care for themselves, are: where do I begin and what do I need?
Okay, so this is something that our next guest hears all the time. Ann Kegler is the coordinator for Altenheim Resource Services, and she keeps her hand on the pulse of all the resources here in the Ohio Valley. And recently, Ann and I talked about how she is the perfect first stop when you're looking for help.
I can help folks determine what they're going to need, look at their strengths, look at things that they may have with deficits, whether it be financial, health, whatever, and, try to get them going in the right direction to get what they need to either age successfully or help their care receiver age in the best possible way they can.
Okay. Age successfully. I like that term. Tell me what that means to you.
To me, that means living up to the best life we can have. Most often as we age, we have encumbrances, whether that might be, family, that might be health issues, that might be environment. But what can we do to maximize where we are with supports and services so we can make our own decisions, live where we hope to live, aging in place, hopefully, and, move on to whatever that next part of the journey is in the best life we can.
Okay, so I imagine a lot of your calls come at a time when people need answers now, or they needed them yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And so my question to you, when is the best time to start doing your research, to really start looking into things?
When I was in graduate school, one of my professors would always say, "It depends." Good question. And this is one of those, it depends. Some people need to start earlier. Of course, I'm a big advocate of doing our advanced directives as soon as we hit legal age. We never know what's going to happen. We both know our lives can change in a heartbeat. So as soon as someone achieves legal age, they need to look at medical powers of attorney. They need to look at living wills. Perhaps a will and your durable power of attorney can wait, but those things that are so critical to our physical and mental health are important to get done now. Looking down the line, our parents age differently, our care receivers age differently. So I've had friends who have had to start caregiving when they were very young, and actually their care receivers were pretty young. But others, it's like with my family, my parents were in my 80s when I had to start really looking toward caregiving with them. So it depends. I don't think it's ever too early to learn. Find out what's out there. Learn what's in your community. Be observant. When we're looking at our families, check on their environment. Are they in a safe location? Is their house amenable to aging? Or do they need to make some changes? We live in an area of great diversity. So we have those that are right here in, urban areas of Wheeling. And then we have those that are out by Marshall County, Ohio County. And it's extremely difficult to get services to them. It's also difficult for them to get out. So again, earlier preparation is going to be more important than, say, for the family that lives right in town next to Kroger. Services can get to them, but it's never too early to think about it and to have the conversation.
Have the conversation. That's something I think is so important. I know that in the line of work that I do, there's a lot of times where obviously we're working with families that have never had the conversation. And when you never have the conversation, you just feel like you have no idea where to go, where to turn, what to do. And a lot of families just think, well, mom and dad will just move in with me. And that's, mom and dad do not want to do that. And so we need to have these conversations, but I think I think that people think they're harder to have than what they really should be.
I think that's the case, Sherry. And I also think a situation is we're always the children. So it doesn't matter that my mom was 85 and I was however old I was, which shall remain nameless. I'm still the kid, so I think we don't necessarily lose credibility because maybe we never had it, as the children. So I think our parents do end up saying, talk to the hand, I know what's best, I know what I'm doing, whatever. And it makes it far more difficult to have that conversation. The other thing is the wonderful world of family dynamics. If you're looking at an only child is going to have a far different perspective than a child who is one of 4 or 10. So it's a whole different world there when you're trying to get everybody on the same page. Getting into the documents, some parents want to be equal. They want to treat their children equally. So often parents will say, well, we're going to have Joey and Jimmy as co-agents on our powers of attorney. Well, maybe Joey and Jimmy never got along. So, you have to, again, navigate this in a way that is going to be conducive to the well-being of the care receiver in a way that they want to live.
What's the best way you think that we can start these conversations?
Sometimes it's a matter of an emergency that arises and it necessitates a conversation. I always liked a friend of mine who said the holidays are a great time to start this. Fix up the slushy machine, get a bottle of wine, whatever, and sit down, and the family is most often all together and just go into it.
Yeah.
For West Virginians, the West Virginia Center for End of Life Care has some great documents, great information, things that caregivers need to consider, and little bullet points that might be helpful when everybody is together and able to talk about what do you want done? What do you not want done? Not to mention learning where things are, because that's the other thing I run into, Sherrie, is families come in and they have no idea about assets. They don't know about insurance coverage. They're just, really stumbling through trying to get the information together.
Right. Yes, we've run into that as well. And I think that and I'm speaking to the parents here, not the children, but I'm speaking to the parents here. You are doing this as an act of love for your children. It's really an act of love for your children because you don't want them to feel guilty about the decisions they've made when you have an opportunity to tell them what you want. I just feel that there's so many people that walk around with guilt because they weren't sure whether they made the right decision. But the decision was never, it was never talked about, was never discussed, and people were just doing the best they can with what they know.
I totally agree. And so many people too think because they're doing these documents, they're giving up control, whereas the exact opposite is true. I choose somebody I want to act as my agent. I let them know what I want done and what I don't want done. And when the time comes, they've got it. They can do a checklist and they know what, I don't want to say would have made me happy, but what fell in line with what my wishes were.
Yeah.
And I agree. It is such a great gift to give to your children, to let them know what to expect, what you want, and just, have things, kind of have your ducks in a row so they're not so lost.
One of the great resources Ann talked about was the West Virginia Center for End of Life Care located in Morgantown, West Virginia. You can find more information at westvirginiaendoflife.org. And for more information on Altenheim Resource Services, go to altenheimcommunity.com, or you can call Ann directly at 304-280-8701.
When we come back, we'll introduce you to a local woman who is the epitome of aging awesomely.
From humble beginnings in 1837, West Liberty University has been home to thousands of students. Whether you're a recent high school graduate or looking to complete a college degree later in life, starting your educational career at West Liberty University will be the catalyst for your future. This is a place where you will discover who you are and where you belong, surrounded by lifelong friends and a supportive faculty and staff. Start your journey home at westliberty.edu.
Welcome back to For Mature Audiences. We are so excited for this next segment. That's because we're going to be featuring members of our senior community who are truly inspiring and living lives that are filled with fun, vitality, meaning, and purpose. They are the epitome of a philosophy we call aging awesomely.
To kick off this series, we're going to introduce you to a woman who is defying aging by defying gravity, so to speak. We're going to be talking to Miriam Deinhardt, who is an avid rock climber and fitness enthusiast. And so, Miriam, first of all, I want to say thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So may I ask how old you are?
I'll be 75 this summer.
Wow, 75. So rock climbing, fitness enthusiast. Have you always been a fitness enthusiast your whole life?
I always have. I've always worked out, but of course I didn't climb until after my kids were grown because it's an expensive hobby. And then I got into it at age 50 and it just got hooked. And then I started running at 58. And I've run 6 marathons and 2 Bostons, but my passion is rock climbing.
So how did this become something that you thought you might want to do or might want to explore?
Always been a tomboy all my life. I've always climbed trees and hiked and loved the outdoors. And so once I got on the rocks, it was just love at first sight. I just love it.
So did you see, like when you were little, read stories about people, climbing Mount Everest and stuff, and you said, I want to do that someday? Like, how did this come to be?
I actually wanted to climb Kilimanjaro, but
really?
that never transpired. But Everest I never thought about, but actually that's alpine. I'm not into alpine climbing. I love the rocks.
Okay, so
totally vertical.
Okay, so explain that. How, for people who might not know exactly what it is that you're doing.
I'm just basically what they call free climbing. I'm protected with a rope and a harness in case I fall, but I climb on my own. I don't use any aid to climb.
Okay.
I just actually climbed 6 pitches of El Capitan this September, and it was all free climbing. I didn't need any aid.
So have you ever fallen?
Oh yeah, lots of times.
Oh my gosh, and that doesn't stop you, it doesn't deter you?
No, I mean, I actually had a bad climbing accident 3 years ago. I was setting up a top rope down at Cooper's Rock in Morgantown, and I leaned over to check my equalization on my ropes and lost my balance, and I was not tied in, which was not a good thing to do. And I actually went over head first, and by the grace of God, I threw my left hand up, got the sling, and spun around and slammed my face into the rocks.
Oh my gosh.
So I was a sight for sore eyes for at least a good week. So,
did that make you afraid to go back, or did you know you had to go back?
I had to. I kept trying. In this one area where I set up, it's a very easy climb, but it's still totally vertical, and it's 30 feet, so if you fall, you're definitely going to get hurt. But if you fall and hit your head, there's no chance. But the last time I tried it, I was scared, and my husband kept saying, you don't have to do that. I said, no, I do. I have to do this. So I did, and I conquered my fears. But it has made me much more cautious now, especially, as you get older, you do lose your balance, and your balance just isn't what it used to be when you're young.
Okay, so let's talk about like that breaking through fear. Like you broke through fear in like a major way of getting back up on a rock, right? But there are so many seniors, so many people that allow their fear to stop them from truly living an exhilarating, vibrant life.
I actually was afraid of height when I first started climbing, and it was very hard to overcome. But I just kept climbing and climbing, and I finally overcome it. I'm fine when I'm on a rope, and I know if I fall, I'm going to be caught. And I love the adrenaline rush of the height, but I still have a fear of height if I'm not tied in. So I think it's just natural.
But breaking through that fear is something that you feel. What advice would you have for someone as to if they are afraid of something?
You just have to keep doing it. And that's what I'm telling my youngest grandson. You have to do it to break the fear. That's the only way you're going to break the fear. So hopefully I'll have him up there on the summit this July, all 5 of them.
Well, that'll be wonderful. So setting goals, creating new challenges for yourself. You said you're going to be 75 this summer. And you were telling me you still have goals and challenges that you're setting.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, what are some of those?
Well, my goal in July is to have all 5 grandkids on the summit and my youngest daughter. My oldest one doesn't climb, but she's going down to watch us and to watch my great-grandson. I'm also a great-grandmother.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm going to get him on the rocks, too, when he's 2.
Eventually. So has anyone suggested you're just too old for this? And what do you say to
I've
them?
already had people accuse me of child abuse because of having my grandkids climb. All my grandkids have climbed it, too, except the 2 oldest ones. They were 6 and 4, but the other 3 were all 2 years old when I got them on the rocks. And they've all loved it. I've got 2 really, really good climbers. My youngest granddaughter, she has summited so many times, we've lost count.
That's wonderful. So tell me, what is your philosophy on aging?
You try not to get old, but obviously we don't have a choice. You just got to keep moving. That you have to keep moving and you have to do what you love to do.
But I have aches, I have pains, right?
I tell people, they say, I can't exercise because I have bad knees. I said, well, I've had 2 knee replacements. You can do upper body, you can do biking. There's so many things you can do. There's no excuse for just sitting on a couch potato. There's just no excuse for it.
So would you say your key to aging awesomely is to keep moving?
Yes, yes. And I lift weights. I'm big on weights to keep my muscles strong. Years and years ago, I had a herniated disc in my neck, and I was only in my 30s, and I had saw Dr. Chris Marquardt, who's no longer here, but he was a friend of mine, and he didn't want to do surgery. He got me into weightlifting. He said, if you can keep your muscles strong to support your skeleton, and I just saw him a couple years ago, and he said, did you ever have surgery? I said, no. He said, I told you wouldn't have to if you kept lifting, and I still lift. Now, some days are a lot harder than others, and I just had COVID again for the 3rd time over Christmas, so I was down for a good 3 or 4 days there. I didn't make it to the gym, but I'm usually 6-7 days a week at the gym.
Down but not out. What advice would you have for other people on aging?
Keep active. You have to keep active, and you have to keep a good frame of mind.
All right. Miriam, thank you so much for joining us. We really
you're
appreciate it. And
welcome.
you definitely are a prime example of aging awesomely.
As we said earlier, each month we'll be featuring a senior citizen in our community who is a great example of aging awesomely. Could it be you or maybe someone you know? We'd like to hear from you.
Now, don't worry. You don't have to climb huge rocks or boulders like Miriam, but you could be starting a new career or engaging in an interesting hobby or serving our community in amazing and extraordinary ways. If you or someone you know is retired and living a vibrant, exciting, meaningful life, well then, we want to know you better.
Send us an email, give us a call, or message us on Facebook with your suggestions. Who knows? You just may be featured in our Aging Awesomely segment on For Mature Audiences. And that's going to do it for this first edition of For Mature Audiences. We hope that you learned something new, found something helpful, were inspired, or, of course, all of the above.
That's right. We're going to be back next month with another show that's going to be filled with lots of great information and, of course, guests that will inspire you. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.